Hello.
Hi, happy Monday.
Happy Monday.
How are you today?
I'm good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Let's everyone who's joining in and watching, be sure to give us a shout out in the chat box there. Is everyone summer? Are the kids out of school yet? They are, right?
Most of them, but not everybody.
Okay, this is the week though, isn't it? It's the last.
Yeah, it is. Although I've had some clients talk to me about like graduations being next weekend, which I was like, oh,
Oh, much further out. I see.
yeah.
I see. Oh well. All right, good. Well, we've got a lot to talk about today. So you guys who are watching, we were just doing some chit-chatting about overwhelm because it happens to all of us, especially when we decide to embark on a journey of change and we face obstacles and challenges and all of that stuff. I mean, how many of you have done that? You're like, oh, I'm going to start something new. And then you're learning new things, you're trying new things, and you're like, how do I keep up with everything? Or you have a setback, which is also a part of life. Those setbacks, they happen, and I think, Carissa and I were discussing a little bit about how our perspective and our mindset when it comes to overwhelm and when it comes to setbacks is really important for getting us through, right?
1000%. Yeah, just acknowledging your patterns, I
Yeah.
think is really important to be able to recognize like the current behaviors that we have when those setbacks set in or the negative thinking sets in or the overwhelm sets in. How we kind of turn to those, eating for a lot of people, alcohol. I mean, it could be whatever, right? Whatever it is to get ourselves out of there. And I find that as soon as I let that negative thinking kind of stick with me, and for a lot of people, like we're repattering our brain, yeah, like for our whole life, most of us,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
when the feeling of like failure and shame and guilt, on the back end of that, it leads to the reward of which is so fascinating to me because the negative thinking takes over and so then we go to that instant reward system, the sugar or the overeating or the just not staying on track. And, then those like feelings of positivity come in for just a moment, but then it's right back into the negative thinking.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating when you kind of shift out of that and catch that negative pattern and be like, oh, I'm going to choose something different. It's really cool.
Yeah, I agree with you. It is about patterning. Like we operate and everyone who did the retreat with us or who's going to do any upcoming retreats with us, they know that we talk a lot about this because these patterns are really, really, they're the things that keep us stuck.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And one of the first things to do, though, is notice that you're actually stuck in the pattern. And that's the hardest part, right? But anytime you say to yourself, oh my gosh, here we go again, or why me, or why does this always happen, or, I'm doing this again and I don't want to do that. Like, whenever you find yourself, like, that's the time where you catch yourself in that repeated pattern. And you're right. A lot of the times, if we're not aware that we're in the pattern, then we end up in this spiraling vortex all the way down. And the way the brain works is we have, neural networks, right? There are networks in the brain. And the more and more we use that network, the more and more we are inclined to move in that direction.
Yeah.
So that's why, things like brushing our teeth or driving the car, they're almost mindless because we've done them so many times. But some of these thinking and thought patterns are almost mindless because we've done them so many times. So it really does, like you said, it's like, okay, we've got to halt, stop. This is what's happening. I
I
was
think, go ahead.
I was on a call with a group of colleagues, and we were talking about something similar to this. And one of the gentlemen shared that him and his mom used to have this repetitive argument, like they'd argue about the same thing every single time, right? And then one day, instead of responding back to his mom, he just replied back, pink elephant.
Interrupt the pattern.
Totally interrupt the pattern.
I
Right.
love it.
And then his mom responded the way she always responded. And then she realized, like, oh, wait a second, what am I responding to? But that pattern interrupt is a really, really big deal. For those of you who are in the level 2 retreat, when we have our meeting tomorrow night, we are going to be talking about, you know, triggers and pattern interrupt. That's what's on our slate for tomorrow evening. But you guys, this is how we break free. You know, so when we're working with clients and we're seeing the same repetitive pattern, this is where we have to see where do we need to interject in this pattern and create something different and do something different, you know?
That's amazing. You made me think of a story. It just happened to me because it also happens in the body, right? Not just in the mind. So
absolutely.
As long as I've been going to my yoga studio, which has been several years, I tend to make it like very ritual like. I like to go early. So I have the same pattern when I go. I go early. I go about 20 minutes early. I choose the same spot. Today, this morning, I was like, I'm going to try a different spot.
Oh, you go, girl.
But I have to say, I could not believe what, like, my body, it felt like I was in my very first class.
Really?
It was that fascinating. I was like, what is going on? What is happening? My body was like, whoa, we are not where we always are. What are you doing? Slow it down. So I took that time to just acknowledge it and give my body like a lot of compassion to be like, okay, it's okay. We're going to get through this and just be real positive throughout the whole thing. Because, you know, in the past without working, you know, in the mind, it was so easy to always be like, oh my God, this is so terrible. What's wrong with you? What's wrong today? Why can't you push through? Because I mean, I've been doing it for years. So I know how I can be in classes, but it really was fascinating how my body responded. I just moved 3 spots down. That's all I did.
You pattern interrupted for sure.
I did. So now it made me think like I might start moving around the studio more. I might start doing classes in different spots and see how my body reacts to that. And then I feel like the more self-compassion I can give to myself, the better the outcome will be. Because my body will just start to get used to that, right? Because it was just so used to doing the same thing all the time in that studio.
Yes, you guys, it is. And Chris, I think you hit it is the flexibility, not just yoga flexibility, but the flexibility in being able to operate and be within different situations, right? In neuro-linguistic programming, we have, you know, the person with the most flexibility is the one that's able to facilitate the best, right? And manage life the best, because we always have stuff that's coming at us. And when we're like totally inflexible, you know, it's like it hits, it hurts. If we are flexible, right, there's no more pain. So it really is about having that flexibility and working that muscle of flexibility that makes a difference, whether it's a new habit, whether it's new changes, whether it's mind patterns, whether it's, you know, the arguments we get into with our family members that are the same arguments over and over and over again. Like mine is around dishes. Why doesn't anybody wash the dishes? You know, maybe I need to start walking around saying purple elephants in the sink. You know, but it is those patterns that we fall in. And if we can be flexible, the more flexibility we have, the less we are in that same stuck place, you know? And I like the other thing that you said too, is because it's not just about your mind, but your body also responds as well. We forget that our mind and our body are ultimately one and the same, you know?
It really was fascinating. I mean, when I got over there, logically, I was like, what is going on? And then I just really tuned into my body. That's what I love about yoga, because you have the space to do that as you're exercising. And that's when I really felt it. I was like, whoa, it's my body that is uncomfortable here. It's my body that's sending the signals to my brain of, whoa, slow down. Maybe it doesn't feel safe. I don't know. But it wanted me to slow down.
Yeah. And it's not just your body. Your body is also registering it right from the outside. It's all the stuff that we're seeing that exists, in our periphery. Katie says, yeah, she was told to wear her watch on a different arm, take a different route from your normal route. Yeah, to really strengthen your brain, do things differently. Brush your teeth with the other hand that you've normally, brushed your teeth with. Like, do things differently so that you create that neuroplasticity, so that you create that mental flexibility. It's really important. But what you say about the body is really important too, because think about some of the habits that, a lot of clients struggle with. Let's say it's like stress eating, it's like, so you get stressed, and then if this is your pattern, it's like all of a sudden you have stress, and then there's an automatic craving that goes along with it. And no joke, it is probably physiological for you, right? It's not just coming from your head. It's actually a physiological, because that connection between the stress and a comfort food has been so well established, your body is now saying, okay, give me that comfort food. Give me that comfort food, whether it's chocolate or cake or, I don't know, potato chips or whatever. Maybe it's something healthy. Maybe it's like stress and strawberries, So whatever that is. But we create these patterns, and it's until we break the patterns that we actually gain facility and power and control. Otherwise, we're automatic pilot. Hello to everybody who's watching. Chat with us in the chat box. Tell us a little bit about what you're hearing and what you're thinking from this conversation today. Because what we started talking about here is overwhelm. And this is one of the places where we run into overwhelm. If we start to really be honest with ourselves, the things that overwhelm us, right? Or at the point at which we become overwhelmed, there's actually a pattern there. There's a pattern that occurs. Sometimes for people, before they start something new, they already know they're going to fail.
Oh yeah. There's those ebbs and flows, right? Like we set out for a goal, we get very excited. And then if we don't react to it, we tend to fall right back, and all the fear comes in of why we can't do it. So yeah.
I think about some of the people that we know who have kind of had the similar struggles, for a while now. Right. And where do those struggles come from? And they come from, again, this pattern. So you guys who are watching and listening, where are you starting to see the patterns in your life where you get stuck, and starting to see how there's a lot of connectedness in all the different areas maybe of our lives where we get stuck? Because the patterns usually aren't specific to just one area, right? They usually occur in many different places. And you can start to see, oh, there's that pattern. I get overwhelmed when I feel like there's too much to do and I don't have enough time. Or I get overwhelmed when I feel like I don't think I can be successful. Or I get overwhelmed when I'm not acknowledged for my efforts and I still have to put in more effort. Right? Or I get overwhelmed when people want all these different things for me and I feel like there's no energy exchange back in return. Right? So that's where we want to start to look. We want to start to look at those overarching patterns, because that is where we can start to create that freedom.
Yeah. And actively question them and reframe them and really see where they're coming from. I think that's a beautiful, beautiful start, because like we said in the beginning, everything's so automatic. Most of us aren't even acknowledging that that's what's happening to us. We mostly look at it's them or the situation or what's happening to me, and not really understanding that it's our perception of what's happening that's causing all that stress.
Yeah, exactly. And then we have to, I want to keep in mind too, I'm thinking about we have a lot of clients who come in and they want to lose weight, right? And they're really frustrated because they haven't lost weight in a long time. And, there's always that really great initial momentum and they're losing.
Yeah.
And for some people, then they get stuck, right? And we start to look at why are they getting stuck? And we start to see these different patterns, right? We start to see these patterns of overwhelm show up, right? Or we see people kind of falling back into those old habits like, oh my gosh, there's this stressor. And now I find myself going back to eat as a result of that stressor. Okay. Or we have clients who part of the pattern is just not fully taking care of themselves on a consistent basis, right? Like they'll be like, oh, okay, I'm going to have this great smoothie for breakfast. And then they don't eat again until dinner because they've forgotten to take care of themselves at lunch, right? How many times does that happen?
Oh, yeah.
Or where they fall back into a pattern where it's like, oh, well, I heard on the internet that, having a mango pineapple smoothie for breakfast with some kale is going to really help me lose weight.
Mm-hmm. No.
And so we end up stuck in these places. And so that's a big part of, I think, what you and I do too in working with clients is helping to look at what are the patterns and how do we shift and alter the patterns,
Yeah, which is so fascinating. And I love it.
Yeah.
I love seeing my own patterns. I love helping clients recognize their patterns because that's where you can truly change and you can really empower yourself to move forward.
Yeah. Well, that's the truth. We all have them, right? I'm not perfect.
I have them.
None of us are perfect. But let's talk about that, right? Because that's an area of opportunity. Sometimes I know that people will come in and it's like they've done really, really well. And then all of a sudden, they have a bad day. They get, angry with their spouse, or they've eaten foods they didn't really want to eat, or they, missed their exercise routine, or something else in their life has popped up and they feel defeated, right? They feel defeated. And it's like, well, that's another gift, right? Yes. There's so much gift and opportunity in the pieces that we look at as failure, right? That we can't, a lot of times we label things as good and bad. And most things aren't just good or bad. They just are what they are. It's all a matter of perspective, right? It's all a matter of what happens. Think about it. How many breakups have you had in your life, right? Like you dated someone.
Oh, and they all feel terrible.
And it feels terrible. Yes. Exactly. This is so bad. My life is never going to be the same. Oh my gosh. But if you didn't go through those relationships, learn from those relationships, if you didn't have that breakup, right, you wouldn't have your spouse today, So it's like everything could be good and bad, right? So it's good. Now, what was really bad before is actually good now. So nothing by itself is good or bad. It's just kind of the perspective that we take, and everything could fall on both sides, so that perceived failure of, oh my gosh, I went out and I had one too many drinks, right? And I felt awful the next morning. This is really bad. Well, maybe that was a good sign for you to be like, oh, you know what? That doesn't really work for my body. And now you can learn and grow from it. I mean, are you seeing these lessons happening with our people?
Oh, definitely. They start to, especially when they get into like week 5 and 6 of their program, they start to really understand what's good for their body and what's not good for their body. And a lot of people, just in keeping it with alcohol, they start recognizing like, wow, this doesn't really make me feel good. It does have a negative impact on my mood and my energy levels. And so I'm going to choose not to, partake in it a lot. But it really is fascinating what happens when we start to balance ourselves. And then, we test the waters because that's what we do.
Of course, we're human.
Yeah. And it's great feedback. Like you said, like even that experience that feels negative because you don't feel good and maybe you're angry or sad or whatever it is, that's feedback. It's feedback of what you ultimately want. Yeah. So that's not a negative thing.
No, and I love the word feedback because I think that hits the nail on the head, right? Because feedback isn't necessarily negative or positive. It's just
No.
feedback, right?
Yeah.
Every action has a consequence and a reaction, and that's just part of what it is, and that's just part of the way that life is. And a lot of times we torture ourselves because we put all of this meaning to everything that happens rather than kind of looking at it as feedback and being like, okay, this is what happened. This was the response. And now how do I learn and grow from this place here? Versus moving into the shame, the guilt, the sadness, you know?
Mhm.
And I find a lot of people get trapped in that area where it really is feedback, right?
Mhm.
This is an opportunity to highlight on what worked and what didn't, right?
Yeah.
Where can I go from here? How can I get better?
Yeah. What do you ultimately want?
Yeah, yeah. So
Because that's not what you want. You just got feedback on that. So that's great. Move forward to what you do want.
exactly, exactly. And we have a choice, you guys. We have a choice as to whether or not we want to remain stuck in the negative or whether or not we want to shift out. And believe me, there's some times when I'm like, okay, I just need to wallow. And I give myself like a time, like I'm going to wallow for the next 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour. I try not to go longer than that, right? But
Mhm.
give myself some time to wallow, right? And then move on. And the less and less you can wallow, the better off. But sometimes, it's human. We are a human. It's important to experience the feelings and the emotions that you have, but not become attached to those feelings and emotions.
Yes, I think that's super, super important because I never want a client to feel that the negative emotions are ever wrong or
Yes.
bad.
Yes.
You should give yourself time to really sit with them and feel them and explore them. Like, what is it that
Absolutely.
they need? What is it that these emotions are trying to tell me? And
Yeah.
then, yes, lift yourself up and not get attached to them. I think
Yes.
that's so important because we're human. So all of these emotions are happening. That's the beauty of being human. So
Yeah.
we shouldn't really get attached to any of them because they all walk together. Like joy and sadness, they're hand in hand, those
Yeah.
two.
Yeah.
They come as one.
Yeah. Well, and it's an opportunity for us to really learn and grow, right? Emotions are there for us to access ourselves,
Hmm.
right? The good, the bad, the ugly, all of them. And a
Yeah.
lot of times we've been taught to like bury that emotion, don't feel that emotion, bury the emotion, don't feel the emotion. And when we do that, we actually exacerbate the issue overall, right? Because now we're not actually experiencing what there is to experience.
Yes. I think that's a great point too, because that is something that probably many of us grown up with. Or, even in society, we experience it. When people cry, everyone's always like, no, 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 don't
Yeah,
cry.
don't
You
cry.
know, I'm always like, please cry. Go ahead. I
Yeah,
think it's a very courageous thing to do.
yeah.
But yeah, we're so used to always stuffing and stuffing and stuffing. And then it comes out in those subtle ways,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
like not taking care of yourself for a
Yes,
very long time.
exactly, exactly. I think the word is vulnerability, right?
Mhm.
When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable in a safe way, right? In a safe
Mhm.
way. When we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, in the presence of people that we trust or with ourselves, we allow ourselves to really be able to grow from that point. And this is something I've had a lot of learning in my life because I'm always been super stellar, super, this is just, I'm like hard. I mean, come on, I'm from Brooklyn, right? I'm like hard, you know. So when we do that, though, we shut ourselves off to ourselves. We shut ourselves off to really experiencing who we are, but also sharing with the world and really connecting to other people.
Mhm.
But in that, we end up in these trapped, again, coming back to these trapped patterns that we get stuck in. So that vulnerability is really important, not to just kind of suck it down and pretend like things aren't impacting
Mhm.
us.
Yes.
Actually go through and experience what there is to experience.
Mhm.
Often so much learning in that journey.
Yes.
So much learning there. What are you guys hearing in this? We've got just a couple minutes for our Lunch and Learn Live here, but go ahead and type in the comment section. Tell us what's coming up for you. What are you thinking about? What are you hearing as part of this conversation? I know you guys talked a little bit about some of these things in the group session last week, right?
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that.
It was nice to see, because it was interesting that once one client opened up about their struggles, then it created the space for others to feel comfortable to share where they're struggling.
Yeah.
And so I think it's good to be able to share in a group setting if you feel comfortable, because it can make you feel so good to understand, like, wow, it's not just me. These other women are feeling this too. And then also to gain the support from one another, and to be able to turn around, because it really is a courageous step to be vulnerable and to share, and also to go on this journey. So I feel like that needs to be noted and reminded for a lot of people that, I mean, that's a beautiful gift that you're giving to yourself.
Yes.
So there's going to be ebbs and flows, and to never stop. And that's what I love about our clients too, is that even when they're going through this, they still show up.
Yeah.
They're still showing up.
Yeah.
They're still actively doing things. They may not feel like the highest of the high yet, but it's there.
Yes.
It's going to get there, because the gift is in the gunk. And
yes.
So,
the gift is in the gunk. I like that. We should coin that. Gift is in the gunk. Yeah. Donna says she's realizing too that most of her symptoms are from the way that she was thinking, right? Most of her symptoms, thinking patterns, were part of causing the symptoms. And yeah, Donna, I don't know if you were listening before when I was talking about, the mind and the body, but they are deeply connected, right? We can get ourselves to the point where we have a thought, and immediately when we have that thought, we have a physiological response.
You can make yourself sick.
Absolutely.
From thoughts. You can weaken your immune system from thoughts.
Yeah.
It's so fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. And we're getting a lot more evidence, a lot more scientific research that backs all of this, how the mind and the body are so truly connected. So it's important for us to remember that, especially when we're feeling stuck in those moments, right? Mm-hmm. Exactly, Donna. Yeah, you can't get better until you change your mind, right? We've got to work on changing our mind. That's why that piece is so important in the work that we do, is because mindset is really the key to everything. Our ontology is how I'd coin it, right? It's our ontology. It's our ontological being. But everything that is happening for us, emotionally, impacts our physical well-being as well. Mm-hmm. So, and again, pattern interrupt. When we change that way of thinking, we change all the other stuff that's happening. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty darn cool. Yes, it's a big missing piece of the puzzle. Exactly, Donna, 100%. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us for Lunch and Learn Live today. We will see you all next week.
Yep, next Monday. Take care, everyone. Bye. Bye.